Good afternoon, Rabbi. We were asked a question regarding the blessing which is made on cooked wheat or cooked barley, and this resembles, of course, the question about eating chullent as well, which is called chamin in Hebrew. They also put barley in there and they cook it together with the chullent, or they put wheat. There are different customs, some here, some there. Whatever it is, the question is, what is the blessing? Why is that really a question? Because the truth is that when the wheat is raw, the blessing for the wheat is borei pri adama, even if it's toasted or raw, anything like that. But once it's made into a flour, it's ground up into a flour and made into a cake or a pastry, obviously then the blessing becomes mezonot. So what about if it's just boiled in a pot and it becomes like kind of like mushy and comes together and sticks? So the question is, what about that? This is like a kind of like a borderline situation. So the truth is, right, that there is actually an opinion brought down in the Mishnah Berurah in Siman Reish Yud Chet 212. Over there it says the Mishnah Berurah, there is some authorities who want to say that if it comes together and sticks when you cook up the wheat or the barley, so then the blessing would be mezonot. Why? Because it becomes like a porridge kind of thing, where you're eating it as a sort of like a meal, to get satiated. So therefore, in a case like that, there are some who say that the bracha is borei min mezonot. However, if we look in the Bet Yosef there in that siman, in the same siman, we find over there that he brings in the name of the Bet Yosef, of the Tosfot, of the Rosh, Rabbeinu Yonah, the Rambam. They all say more or less the same idea, that always when wheat or barley is cooked, as long as it's still complete and has not been ground up or divided up into several pieces, each wheat being smashed up into pieces, as long as it hasn't been like that, even though it's a little bit mushy, as long as it's still complete, still the blessing is borei pri adama. So therefore we see, right, that according to Bet Yosef, according to most of the Rishonim, this is not so, this is not the case. And the truth is, right, that the Rama also agrees with the Bet Yosef. So therefore, even for Ashkenazim, who go like the rulings of the Rama, it seems like the preferred option would be to make on such a food, which is cooked wheat or cooked barley, or chullent, which has barley or wheat inside, the blessing would be borei pri hadama, according to what we said. There's also another opinion brought down in the Magen Avraham. It says in Magen Avraham that if the husk of the wheat or the barley is removed, which is the outer, right, the outer layer, which is actually waste product, it's not really like food, it's not nutritious, that part. So they say that if it was removed, the husk, so there it becomes mezonot. Why? Because it's not really considered to be complete anymore. But the truth is that if you look in the Rishonim that the Bet Yosef brings down, it doesn't say like that. It says more. The idea is that if it's smashed up and broken up into pieces, but the fact that the husk was removed doesn't really make it into mezonot. Why is that? Because it's still complete, more or less, right? The husk is just waste product. Nobody wants to eat that. Today they eat it for health purposes, maybe because it helps with the digestion. But actually, the husk itself doesn't have any caloric value. It's not really so much like a food, and it has also like a kind of like a bitter taste, whatever. And this is the reason why, in most cases, it's removed. There are some health people who like to eat that as well. The whole grain. That's something else. But anyway, the point is that since most of us are eating with the husk removed, nevertheless, even if the husk is removed, the blessing is still borei pri hadama, according to most of the Rishonim, which are brought down in Bet Yosef, and the Rama also agrees. So therefore, the preferred way would be, right, to make on such foods, cooked wheat, cooked barley, or chullent, which has those ingredients inside, it will be borei pri hadama. So regarding the chullent, there's also other things in there. There's just potatoes, and there's sometimes chickpeas or all kinds of other ingredients. There's also meat there. But the truth is that usually the meat is not the majority of the chullent. The majority of the chullent is usually the potatoes and the other stuff. So therefore, according to what the Shulchan Aruch says in Reish Yud Bet, we go according to the majority in case like that. Why is that? Since the wheat and the barley, as we said, are not really the bracha, the blessing is not borei min mazonot in a case like that. So therefore, we go according to the majority of the chullent. Since the majority of the chullent in most cases is coming from the ground, so therefore the blessing would be borei pri adama on the whole chullent. You don't divide up the chullent into pieces and make categories and make a blessing on each one. This is not, as we already mentioned, in our earlier lectures, right, that this is not the proper thing to do because there's definitely a bracha lavatala there. There's a bracha shenat tzricha, because on one dish you don't make several blessings on one dish, even though it's a mixture of several different ingredients. So therefore, Rabbi, the proper thing to do, as we said, is to bless Borei Pri Adama on these things. What would be the final blessing? Borei Nefashot. Why is that? Since we're not making Borei Mine Mazonot on this kind of a dish, so therefore the after bracha will not be ala michya, because the ala michya is only going on something which the bracha is mezonot. So therefore it doesn't apply in this case. But what about if a person made a mistake, right? By mistake. There are people who make this mistake all the time. Even rabbis make this mistake. That they make on the chullent, if they're eating chullent without bread, so they make on the chullent borei mine mazonot, because they think that the barley and the wheat in there is mezonot. It's not true, this is not correct. But nevertheless, even if they did, they made a mistake like that. And also, let's say, even after he ate the chullent, he also made ala michya. So he did both from both sides he made a mistake. Nevertheless, b'diavad, right after the fact, he does fulfill his obligation. He doesn't have to make another blessing. Why is that? Because the truth is that we find brought down in the Mishnah Berurah and also in the book Halichot Olam of Morein Rabbeinu, Rabbanan Shalom, Ovadia, that if a person makes mezonot on any type of food, b'diavad, after the fact he fulfills his obligation, because mezonot is also considered to be a general bracha, which includes in it all kinds of things which give nutrition to people, even though it's not made from wheat or barley or the 5 species. Nevertheless, b'diavad, if a person makes mezonot, he does fulfill his obligation. The same thing also applies if a person said ala michya by mistake on such a chullent like that. Even though he shouldn't have done that, but if he said it, he fulfills his obligation for the after bracha, for the after blessing. He doesn't have to make another after blessing borei nefashot on the same chullent. Why is that? Because there are several doubts regarding this. If a person fulfills the obligation, instead of saying borei nefashot, he says ala michya. So therefore, since we're in doubt, we have several doubts there, as it's brought down in the book Chazon Ovadia, Morein Rabbeinu. So therefore, since there are several doubts, we don't bless again. So if a person did such a thing like that, he made by mistake borei mine mazonot on cooked wheat or cooked barley or chullent, and he also made the after bracha ala michya, he fulfills his obligation b'diavad and doesn't have to come and bless again. Baruch Adonai leolam, amen ve'amen. Chazak u'baruch.